Hi, welcome. In this video, I want to just take a couple minutes to help people line up this whole problem with the picture of change, and a specific interaction, okay, that can help people understand the problem, okay? It'll challenge people, but you have to think about it, right, as you're doing it. Now, here's the thing. The whole dog training world is based on positions a certain way. They really don't care about what underpins the responses, right? They don't really care about how they got there, okay, with getting a dog to do the sit down, come and stay. All they care about is that it's happening, right? And they're assuming things based on appearances. Now, here's the thing, because when I do this with dog owners during a session, it blows their mind, like in terms of really gets them on the right path of thinking, right? When you're interacting with a dog in a very specific way, the way I show, interaction focused, you'll see the dog go into a level of challenge, okay, disagreeableness, and there'll be a moment where, again, in terms of the dog being in the sit, the dog's actually trying to lay down, okay, trying to go into a down position, right? In terms of them wanting to do it, okay, and so the dog will flatten out and then be very resistant to want to come back up into a sit. Again, based on a interaction, based on influence. Now, here's the change up, right? So a dog will do this, right? The person has a dog into the sit position, interacting. The dog has a sense that what's happening, right, is disagreeable, and is pulling down on that collar, right? Just talking about a flat collar, but pulling down on their own, right? Pulling down to want to go into that down, to make it stop, right? They want to gain control back. The dog goes into the down, right? And then, so what I'll do is the dog does that, and what I'll tell the dog owner, okay, so this time we're going to change it up, but this will help you consider a couple things here about why you want to do training the way I'm describing and interacting the way I'm describing. But think about context here. So I said this time, okay, as you're interacting, the dog is into the sit position. Now, before the dog starts to move in that direction, starting to go into the down, trying to go in that direction, I want you to take your hand, put it on the dog's shoulder blades, and assert some influence, right? Bring the dog into a down, push on the dog. Now, just to qualify that, when I say push, and people watch my videos, watch how I do it, I'm not trying to jam that dog, like trying to just ream that dog down, because that's not, here's the thing, is that doesn't line up in terms of, again, intent. Okay, understand that when I talk about pushing a dog into a down, it's about a level of influence that is both reasonable, okay, and wanting to go deeper in terms of getting in the dog's head, okay? So the concept here is, and the concept would be like, it's like how I use the example I use, it's the tug of war team, right, that collapses, right, they buckle, right, just from a certain level of influence where they're starting to collapse, right, their legs are starting to buckle, they're starting to come into agreement, okay, they're starting to buckle, okay, that's how I describe influence. So as you're pushing on the dogs, and again, this is the change up, start to push on the dog's back. Now, here's the thing about intent. I talk about not using commands. And this, again, is something I would really encourage dog trainers, dog owners to think about. As you're pushing on the dog's shoulder blades straight down, just straight down, not all, just straight down, a certain way, not too hard, but with the intent of where you want the dog to go, ask yourself the question based on that, and not based on the resistance part. Does the dog understand where you want him or her to go? Yes or no? As you're pushing. Absolutely. See, a lot of people think, oh, well, because the dog didn't hear a certain word, but it's a verbal command. But understand, and this is the thing that really challenges people, I say, well, the reason you don't want to use commands is because you're already perceived a certain way. So if you use a command, it's like signing a contract. The dog may be motivated to do it, but not for the right reasons in terms of what your goals are. The change in perception of dogs. See, this is like, I'm giving you a really good gold nugget here, okay, to help you understand why does I do things the way I do in terms of the sequence I follow, how I package this up. But getting back to pushing, as you're asserting influence on the dog's shoulder blades, trust me, that dog knows where you want to go. The issue about the resistance part is about who's in control. Okay, now think about what I just said about the dog doing it on its own. In fact, sensing that you're taking control through these interactions and we're really wanting to go into the down and then flatten out and then stop it altogether. It's not because the dog's tired either. I understand people look at that and again, trying to find some baseline to reconcile why the dog's doing that, right? It's a power play. Because if you take the dog off the leash and the down, that dog would just take off again and be gone. It's not because the dog's tired, anything like that. It's because it's about control. It's about who's in control. So as you're pushing on the dog's shoulder blades, and the dog is just launched in to resist, right? I asked myself the question: why do you think? Okay, when the dog went down on his or her own, that was okay, right? They went down there, and you had a hard time getting the dog back up again, right? But then when we switched it up and you pushed on the dog's shoulder blades, now the dog is totally challenging and resistant and doesn't want to go down. Think about that. If you think about that, take the time to consider that and line up everything else, everything will start to make sense. Because it's about control. Just like engaging in terms of my parenting example, it's about control, right? When you get resistance, what's it based on? Think about it. So, it's not about not, and understand, because you have to reconcile the reactions properly. You see, that's the thing that people, like trainers, just look at a position and they don't care about how they got there. And they look at the position and say, oh, there, the dog's in the down for a treat. That's amazing. Well, no, it's not amazing at all. In fact, it's meaningless if you're doing it based on applying the certain idea that way, and you're focused on positions that way, and you're assuming things about dogs' perceptions. Because then change it up the way I described, and then see what happens. All right, and this is why you then line it up as to, okay, now you just put 2 weeks into this idea, you wasted your time because now nothing's changed, and you realize that you've gone home with your dog, and then think about what I'm saying, right? Think about what you've put your time into, what you've trusted, say, a trainer telling, using treats and doing all these things and motivating dogs that way. Now here's the thing, that's why I don't want you to use commands, because the issue about association and signing the contract. And so if you go to verbal commands and you're not touching the dog, you're not interacting the way I'm describing, then you still can get responses happening. The dog still be in control. Perception's not changing. There's depth here. Understand there's depth. All to say there's depth. I would encourage you to really think about what I'm saying, because you have to reconcile what's going on beyond appearances. You have to look at the intent of what you're doing, and then ask yourself the question: does the dog understand where you want the dog to go based on how you're pushing? Because people will push and they assume they're pushing too hard, and it can be that. And even when I'm doing the down, it's like buckling. It's agreeableness. It's like the tug of war team collapsing. So I'm not focused on the position that way. I'm not. When people are pushing, even how I'm doing, it's all technique. I'm saying there's a stopping point as well. It's not about trying to just engage in a level of conflict that way at all with the dog. It's about what the method's doing, covering off how it's coming together. I call it the script to impact the dog's overall decision-making process. So that's all. Understand the intent of what you're doing. So again, I would really encourage you to think about what I'm saying. Rewatch this video, take notes, and think about it, because this is the core of it. I'm giving people like the core of it right here, in terms of just this basic interaction through the down, and challenging the intent of what you're doing, and then reconciling the responses of a dog, and then think about the perceptions, and then line it up. Because here's the thing: it's not like you don't have something to go by. Look at the failure rate. Look at the disconnect part. If you just take the disconnect part and say, okay, I'm not going to ignore the fact that so many dog owners are failing, and this ain't lining up for them. They're putting a week or 2 weeks into it, so I'll go back to what Dale says here, and I want to look at that, because that could be very significant. Well, it is. Okay, just think about how you're engaging. It's all about it starts at the beginning. So by focusing over on an interaction-based approach, removing commands, looking at the intent, looking at, again, what these interactions represent, it all comes together. Understand? And then the dog owner gives them information too, because they're able to look at that and say, yeah, that makes sense. Because you challenge them, say, think about it, then line up with the parenting example. It makes complete sense. And then just think about it. Dog goes down their own, they're fine. You start to engage and interact with, and influence is part of the equation that way, they're resisting it, right? But then when they start to become agreeable to all these interactions, right, with how I present it, the perceptions change. So anyway, if you're looking for information, check out my website. Lots of great information. Thanks for watching.